Hey everyone, welcome to another MacBook Pro gaming video. Today we're going to take a look at a couple of Star Wars games and see how they perform on the new MacBook Pro. First up is LEGO Star Wars The Force Awakens. If you've played a LEGO game before, you pretty much know what to expect here. The game basically recreates the story of Star Wars The Force Awakens in a LEGO world. This game isn't too demanding, so we can run it on the highest possible settings if we're running at 720p. At these settings we should easily be able to maintain over 30 frames per second, and I'll switch to 1080p as well later to give you an idea how that performs. Apologies by the way for the background music, this game didn't actually record sound when I used my capture device, but don't worry, it plays sound perfectly when you're actually playing it on your MacBook Pro. I chose to play this level because the graphics are actually a bit higher than you'd see in most levels, so it's probably the lowest frame rate you're going to see across the game. Even still, you can see it's holding fairly steady in the low 40s. There's a lot going on screen, but the frame rate doesn't seem to fluctuate much at all. Now let's switch over to 1080p, and I'll show you the settings I use to keep the frame rate constantly above 30 frames per second. I turned off FSAA, turned shadow quality to medium, and turned the motion blur off. For the most part, the frame rate should stay above 30 frames per second with these settings. It drops a little bit during explosions like the one you just saw, but those drops are pretty infrequent. Not much else to say about this one. It runs really well in the 13-inch MacBook Pro with Touch Bar, and the only other recommendation I'd make is be sure to use a joystick to play this game because it does not control well with the keyboard at all. And the other Star Wars game we're going to take a look at today is Star Wars Battlefront. So this game came out just over a year ago, and it runs on the Frostbite engine, so the performance should actually be pretty similar to what we saw in Battlefield 1. When I set the graphics settings to auto, the game chose medium for pretty much every setting, and I agree with this. These settings seem to be the best option for balancing between quality and frame rate. I'll show the high and low presets later on so you can see how they perform as well. So in these large outdoor environments, you can see our frame rates holding fairly steady somewhere in the high 30s and low 40s. The frame rates usually go up a little bit when you move to indoor areas since you can't see as far into the distance. Even on the medium settings, this game looks absolutely fantastic. I know this game received mixed reviews when it came out, but I think every reviewer agreed that this game was the best looking Star Wars game ever released. Now let's flip over to the high preset so you can see how this performs. Keep in mind that we were just seeing low 30s and high 40s pretty consistently in this area. So we lost between 5 and 10 frames per second in these outdoor areas, and you'll actually see that when some things happen on screen, it'll actually drop even lower, sometimes down to the 20s. A game like this requires you to have pretty good reaction time, and once your frame rate starts to drop below 30, it makes it harder to react to your enemy's attacks. The game does look even better on this high preset, but if you want to play online at all, I'd recommend choosing something lower. Okay, now let's finally take a look at the low preset and see what this looks like. The first thing I noticed was that a lot of the post-processing effects were gone, and the game didn't look nearly as good as it did on the medium preset. These outdoor areas seem a lot flatter, and although the frame rate is quite a bit higher, sometimes even 10 frames per second or more, it just doesn't seem worth it to me to lose that much visual quality for a boost in frame rate, especially when the game was already very playable at the frame rate provided by the medium settings. Still, if you want to play this game around 60 frames per second, this is pretty much going to be your only option. There are lots of settings to play with, so you can choose to turn some things up and other things down to get a better balance, but that's really down to personal preference, so I'll let you decide that for yourself. So that was a quick look at the MacBook Pro with Touch Bar running two of the most modern Star Wars games available on PC. I did try a few of the older Star Wars games, but I didn't bother recording any footage because most of those games are so old that this computer or even a computer much older has no problem running them at all. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if there are any other series of games that you'd like me to take a look at similar to these Star Wars ones, leave a comment down below, and also leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.